Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our Wellness Matters webinar. My name is Nicole Imgrund, and I am the owner and director of Rivers Edge Counseling Center. And our talk this evening is Adapting Self-Care to Your Schedule. And our facilitator is Jennifer Charlicki. And this is part of a series of webinars. Some of you may have joined us before, and if that's the case, I want to thank you for joining us again. And some of you might be new. If you look on our website on the blog page, you'll see that we have about probably closer to 70 or 75 webinars now. So lots of wonderful topics for you to view. And this is actually the first in our fall series. And so we have some great webinars coming up every couple of weeks now for a while. So you can check out the other topics on our website as well. Just to introduce our facilitator this evening, Jennifer is a registered psychologist at Rivers Edge, and she has been with us since December 2021. Can't believe we're almost coming up on a year, Jennifer, and also it seems like you've been with us and on our team a lot longer.
Yeah.
Jennifer works with children and teens and adults with a variety of presenting concerns such as depression, anxiety, stress management, and assertiveness. Jennifer primarily works from a cognitive behavioral therapy approach, but she incorporates other theories as well, including aspects of attachment theory. Outside of work, Jennifer enjoys spending time with her dog, her husband, and her dog. Good thing I corrected that in case he sees this later and only the dog got a mention. She's spending time with the people she loves and animals she loves, and also reading mystery novels. I didn't know that about you, Jennifer.
Yes.
Good. Well, there is a chat function, and I'm going to keep an eye on it through the webinar in case anyone has any technical concerns. If you have comments you'd like to make along the way, we'd love to see them. And if you have questions, you can post them there or in the Q&A function. And how long would you say your talk is, Jennifer?
40 to 45 minutes.
Okay, good. And then that'll leave us some time at the end for a bit of reading some of the discussion comments. And if anyone has any questions, I know Jennifer would be happy to answer them too. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Like Nicole said, my name is Jennifer, and I'll be leading today's discussion around self-care and more specifically, how to tailor self-care to your schedule. Okay, let's get this going here. Okay, you should be able to see this. Okay. So here's just a little bit of a brief overview of what we're going to be going through. So we'll start with what we commonly think self-care is, as well as some common misconceptions there. We'll move on to what self-care actually is, why it's important, why it's so difficult a lot of the times, how to set very smart and intentional goals so that we're setting ourselves up for success, different domains of self-care, and then we'll end with some resources, and then, as Nicole mentioned, some time for questions. Okay, so what do we think self-care is? I thought it might be helpful to just talk about self-care first as kind of a buzzword or a buzz concept. And I think over, every few months or every few years, there's a different buzzword and something that everyone on social media is talking about. It's getting a lot of attention. And I think over the last little bit, mental health in general has been a buzzword. More people are talking about it. We're asking questions. We're getting very interested in it. And as a result, self-care has also become its own kind of buzzword. This is great, right? We know that mental health in general has been overly stigmatized for a very long time, and to some degrees it still is now. And so it's great when we're opening up those conversations. But the issue that we run into with these buzz concepts is we only get the very kind of surface level representation of it. So for self-care, a lot of times we're going to see things like just treat yourself, right? It's this very glamorized version of it. So keeping in mind that in the social media world, we don't tend to show the more vulnerable sides of ourselves. We show the parts that we think are acceptable, the parts that make us feel really good, right? The parts of us that look really good. And as a result, we don't get a realistic view, right? We don't get representation for those days where we can't find even 5 minutes for ourselves, right? Or those days where we don't have the motivation, right? Or the days where we don't feel like we're worth the self-care. So my goal with this is to kind of broaden our understanding beyond some of the examples on the screen here. So, going out to restaurants with your friends, going on trips, having a bath, having some downtime, right? And these are all four of these are things that 100% can be self-care. There's going to be room for that. But self-care goes far beyond this, right? There's a lot more deeper roots. There's a lot more domains to it. And so if we just focus on self-care in this perspective, we're going to miss out on a lot of the potential benefits. Okay, we're going to go through some common misconceptions of self-care. The first one is probably the most common one, which is that self-care is selfish. Self-care is absolutely not selfish. It's something that helps us stay regulated. So how many times have we felt resentful or angry because maybe we're the ones that got stuck watching the kids? We're the ones who got stuck cleaning up after dinner. You're the one watching the dog. And we get angry because we see the people around us and we say, how is this fair? Right? Why do they get to enjoy their lives and I don't? I'm stuck doing, X, Y, Z. There is something to be said that the people around us should be supporting us in that way. But at the same time, we also have to take control over certain parts of our lives. So we need to find those small moments. And again, it is very difficult, but we need to find those small moments to take control back. So wouldn't it be nice to not feel resentful, to not feel angry, to not feel bitter, right? Once we're taking care of our self-care, we're taking care of our regulation, we're taking care of our emotions so that when we are around the people in our lives that are important to us, we're much more present and overall, we're just not feeling overwhelmed. The next one is self-care takes too much time. So yes, it 100% can take a lot of time. And this is where, again, there's going to be so many definitions of self-care. If you're saying my self-care is going to be going on a trip, yeah, that is very, very long process, right? But it doesn't have to be that. There's going to be lots of ways to incorporate it into our life. And also this concept of time is very different to everyone. A single parent with 3 kids, their concept of 30 minutes is going to be very, very different from somebody who isn't in that situation, right? And that's not to say that one person is more deserving or less deserving of self-care, but it just means that we have to look at what it looks like for ourselves, right? The next one is that self-care is expensive. And again, yes, it can be, right? Again, if we're looking at trips, we're looking at restaurants, yeah, that is expensive. But even more medical or health related things, going to the dentist, that's expensive, right? Therapy is expensive. So there is truth to that, but we need to start tailoring our definition of self-care, right? Again, we're going to look at that a little bit more with the domains, but if we can adapt our definition of what it is, we're going to see that there are small opportunities to incorporate it into our life. The next two kind of go hand in hand a little bit. The first one is that self-care is all about doing nothing and being lazy. And then the flip side is that it's all about pampering ourselves. And as humans, we have this thing where we just need to look at things in very, very, very black and white terms. I either need to be doing all the things or I need to be doing nothing, right? And that's not what self-care is. Self-care is not an all or nothing type of situation. Sometimes, depending on what's going on in your life, if there's a lot of chaos going on, there's just been so much and you're feeling overwhelmed, then yeah, doing nothing, maybe just vegging out on the couch, maybe that's going to be your self-care because that's what you need in that moment. Other times, if you've been really bored with life or you're feeling really low, then maybe your self-care is going to be getting out, making plans, being social, trying new things. But again, it's going to be very, very different. A few more examples that self-care is the same for everyone. Not the case, right? The expectations and my responsibilities are going to be very different from your expectations, the roles that you play for the people in your lives, right? And so there's no point in looking at how somebody else is taking care of their needs and comparing and saying, why am I not doing that? Or why are they doing that? That's not important, right? It's always going to be dependent on your own personal needs. This next one's very interesting. It's this idea that self-care is feminine. And honestly, it wasn't something I ever really thought of, but it has been something that has come to my attention. And yeah, it is just this idea that it's feminine to take care of yourselves. And I think this happens for two different reasons. One, as a society, we just have this need to put things into these boxes of femininity and masculinity, and there's no place to meet in the middle, right? Which isn't helpful, because then when we do have interests that go outside of that box, we feel shameful, we feel guilt, we feel like we need to hide those things, or we just neglect them. And the other reason is that the representations that we see of self-care tend to be the more stereotypically female things. So things like, again, going out with your friends, going out for brunch, getting your hair done. Anybody can do those things. But again, as a society, we're very conditioned to think that any of that is very feminine. And so if you don't identify in a feminine manner, you shouldn't touch it. You shouldn't do that, right? Self-care is a basic need, right? Things like sleep, right? How silly would it be if someone said, sleep is a masculine thing. So people who are feminine, no, you don't need sleep. That would sound ridiculous, right? And it's exactly what we're doing here, right? Your basic needs do not care what your age is, what your gender is, what your ethnicity is. We're going to need to take care of ourselves and engage in that in some capacity. Next one, self-care is only for those who are struggling. Again, I'm going to use that sleep example. Can you imagine if I said sleep is only for people who are tired, right? Food is only for people who are hungry. Water is only for people who are thirsty, right? It doesn't make sense, right? We're not waiting until we need it to engage in it. We're engaging in it to prevent, extreme reactions later on. And the last one, self-care will fix everything. I truly, truly wish it did, because that would be a much easier presentation. It would be one slide. I'd give you a list of 5 things to do, and that would be it, right? But it doesn't work that way. We're not doing self-care to fix things. We're doing self-care to prepare for the inevitable times when life is going to hit us hard, right? When we're going to have challenges, we're going to have stressors, we're going to have things that we're worried about, right? Self-care is going to be used in those moments, as you've been using it already, to regulate you and to help you feel more in control. Okay, so we know what self-care isn't. Now we're going to look at what self-care actually is. So the first one, just for fun, self-care is caring for yourself, right? That makes sense. There are things that we do to maintain our health. And as we'll see through the presentation, health doesn't just mean physical health. That's going to be your emotional health, psychological, spiritual health, social health, right? They're self-defined activities that are necessary for us to have a balanced life and to look after our mental health. And most importantly, they're regularly practiced activities. I don't sleep on Monday and say, well, now I'm good for the week, right? I don't eat breakfast and say, well, now I'm good for the rest of the day. No, I have this understanding that I need to constantly nourish my body. Same thing with self-care. Okay, why is it so important to engage in this? Every single one of us is going to have some type of daily expectation. Kids to look after, work to go to, family, parents to take care of, friends who need your support or just want to spend time with you, school deadlines, practicums, right? There's always, always, always something to do. And more often than not, we are going to put ourselves at the very, very, very bottom of that list. And so the question then is, how can I possibly expect to function at a full capacity for everybody else when I'm not taking care of myself, right? And again, this is much easier said than done. It's a very, very difficult thing to do because a lot of times we'll kind of trick ourselves into saying like, oh, I'm fine, I'm managing just fine. But you're going to reach that point where we start to burn out, right? We see this a lot in the workplace, right? We go, 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 because sometimes it feels like we don't have a choice but to do that. But then we burn out, right? We see increases in stress. We get resentful, right? And then that's detrimental to the relationships around us. So we get more stress, and it's just this ongoing cycle, right? Self-care also decreases our mood, right? The majority of things, challenging things going on in our lives, anxiety, depression, trauma, difficulty setting boundaries, a lot of that can be taken care of with self-care. That's not to say it's going to fix it, right? That if you do a little bit of yoga and you do a little bit of journaling, that all of a sudden everything's okay. No, but it equips you so that when those things happen, you feel a little bit more confident in your ability to take care of it. Okay, why is self-care so difficult sometimes? We are taught a lot of times that, like I said, self-care is very selfish. You need to be taking care of everything else and everyone else around you. And the reality is that we're all just very busy people. And not being busy is a really uncomfortable thing because we're expected, we're reinforced, we're praised for being busy. We live in this very hustle type of culture where you always need to be working towards something. And not just working towards something, but working towards an accomplishment, something that's going to get you validation, right? Something that will give you praise. And so to say, I'm not going to do this thing because I'm going to take care of myself, that doesn't align at all with what we've been taught this far. So naturally, we just avoid it, right? We don't do it at all, right? We need to be on all the time. And we don't know how to prioritize ourselves. So of course it's difficult, right? If your whole life somebody has told you that the sky is purple, and all of a sudden you go to kindergarten and they're like, no, that's blue. You will fight and fight and fight and say that it's purple because that's what you've always been taught. Same example here. If you've always been taught that you need to hustle, 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 and all of a sudden you're being told to just cool it, it's hard, right? Okay, we're going to spend a little bit of time going over SMART goals and what it means to be intentional. Being intentional. This first sentence is one of the most commonly heard sentences, which is, I will do something for myself once, right? How many of us have said some variation of this? I will do something for myself once the kids are asleep. I'll do something for myself once midterm season is over. I'll do something for myself once dinner's done, right? It sounds familiar because we've all said it, right? The issue with this is, again, because we are raised in this hustle culture, you are never not going to have something to do, right? I'm going to do something when dinner is done. Okay, well, after dinner time, now I need to clear the table. Now I need to load the dishes. I need to clean the counters. I need to scoop all the crumbs on the floor. You are always, always, always going to find another thing to do to feel productive, right? And to get some kind of validation. We all do it, right? We wait until we have time to do things. We wait till it's convenient, right? But if we wait till things are convenient, we're never going to do it, right? So being intentional means that we're making time for things, right? We've decided that it's necessary and we've decided that we're worth the effort that goes into it, right? Which again, very understandable that it's a difficult thing to do. But as we go through this, I hope that you can pick up on, subtle things here and there that you can do. Okay, SMART goals. So SMART goals are essentially a kind of equation for setting goals that sets you up for success and just makes it as easy and convenient as possible. So we're going to go through each item in the acronym. I'll define it, and then I'll give you a brief example on how we can use it. So the first one, specific. When I'm setting a goal, is it specific? Do I know exactly what I'm working towards? Is my goal measurable, right? Can I monitor my progress? Is it achievable, right? Am I setting myself up for success, or am I choosing something very kind of broad? Realistic. Does my goal meet my lifestyle and my responsibilities? And lastly, is there some kind of timeline attached to it? So do I know when it starts? Do I know when it ends, right? All of these things are going to make it so that your goal is a little bit easier. Again, self-care is not a very quick prescription. We need to work at it. We need to practice. But I'm going to give you an example. Let's just say my goal is I want to do self-care. If I say my goal is at some point this week, I'm going to do self-care, that gives me no information. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I don't know when I'm doing it. I don't know when I'm stopping. I don't know anything about it. So chances are I'm just not going to do it, right? So then I'm going to fall back into that pattern. So I'm going to be specific. I'm not just going to say self-care. Let's say I'm interested in practicing yoga, but I've never done yoga in my life, but I want to try it. Okay, my goal is a little bit more specific. I want to practice yoga. It's not measurable. I don't know when I'm doing it. So let's say Tuesday. Tuesday, I'm going to do yoga. Am I setting myself up for success? Well, if I say I'm going to do yoga Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and again, I'm somebody who's never done yoga, no, I'm not setting myself up for success. I need to start a lot smaller, right? So that's why I'm just doing it Tuesday. Does this match my lifestyle and my responsibilities? So this one I'm going to combine with time. I'm going to say I'm going to do self-care, or I'm going to practice yoga Tuesdays, but I'm going to do it from 2 p.m. till 4 p.m. So I'm going to do it for 2 hours. Ugh, I don't know. 2 hours for something I've never done before, it doesn't feel like I'm going to reach that goal, right? Let's say that I have a lot of studying that I have to get done on Tuesday. Well, that doesn't match my lifestyle. It doesn't match the responsibilities and the obligations that I have, right? And yes, it is time specific, but it's not reasonable. So instead, I'm going to say Tuesday from 2 until 2:30, I'm going to practice yoga, right? So that checks all the boxes more or less, right? I might go in thinking that 30 minutes is a great place to start. Maybe the first day I do it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was way too much. Okay, I can cut it down the next time. Or maybe I'm like, 30 minutes was nothing. I could have kept going. Okay, I'm going to amp it up. Let's do 45 minutes next time, right? But the point is that I am setting myself up for success. That if I had this in a planner, I could check it off and say, yes, I did it, right? The issue that we sometimes run into when we don't set these very specific goals is if I say at some point this week I'm going to do yoga, well, on Monday, life's going to hit me and I'm going to be really busy. So I'll just do it Tuesday, and then I'll just do it Wednesday, and then so on and so on and so on. Then we get to the last day where now I have to do it, right? And one of two things are going to happen. One, I'm just not going to do it, right? I'm going to fall into that pattern that we've all fallen into where I'll just start on Monday, right? Or I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to have a good time because now instead of willingly engaging in this fun activity, I have to do it, right? I have to do it because I said I would, right? And I have no other day to do it, right? So this is a way of ensuring that I'm keeping my self-care as enjoyable as possible, right? As small as possible, and then building from there. Okay, domains of self-care. Before we go into all the different domains, I thought it might be helpful to explain the hierarchy of needs. So this was a hierarchy developed by a psychologist called Abraham Maslow, and he studied human needs, and he studied this concept at the very top here called self-actualization. And He believed that self-actualization is essentially the purpose of life, that everything we do on this earth is to reach this goal. And basically, we're working towards our full potential, right? It's going to be different for everybody. But he also believed that it was impossible for us to meet one need without having met the need below it, right? So I cannot reach self-actualization unless I have reached esteem, love and belonging, safety, and physiological needs, right? Okay, so let's start from the bottom. Physiological needs, these are going to be our most basic needs: air, water, food. Without this, I can't survive. Once I have met that need, I then move on to safety. So employment, resources, having access to a safe space, right? Those are all things that are going to ensure that I feel secure. From there, I'm going to move on to love and belonging. These are my friendships, our intimate relationships, our family, and overall this sense of feeling connected and feeling like we belong, right? And as a little side note with love and belonging, this is one of the, actually, I would argue and say that this is probably the need that receives the most stigma. This idea that I shouldn't need validation from other people, right? I shouldn't care what other people think about me, right? And if we care what other people think and we seek their validation and that's it, that's the only way that we validate ourselves, then yeah, that can be problematic. But we're built like this. We're built to want to belong. We crave intimacy. We crave connection with people, right? But again, it's something that we're very often shamed for. Okay, moving on to esteem. These are going to be things like self-respect, self-esteem, our accomplishments. This is basically our own interpretation of our self-worth. Then we get to self-actualization. This is reaching our full potential, growing, being creative, right? Basically just living your life, right? But again, I can't meet that unless I've met everything else. And when we look at those very stereotypical representations of self-care, again, the going out for dinner and the trips and all that, a lot of times we're looking at those kind of higher up levels, self-actualization and esteem, and sometimes love and belonging. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I can't do that unless I've taken care of everything else, right? Okay, physical self-care. This is going to be one of our most basic needs, nutrition, right? What have I eaten today? When did I eat? One of the most common things is skipping breakfast. Either we're not hungry, you don't have time, you're running out the door, you're just chugging your coffee, right? It's not nutritional, it's not fulfilling really any kind of purpose, right? And again, there are a million reasons why this happens, right? We wake up late, the dog was being kind of annoying this morning, or your kids needed something, or whatever, right? There's lots of reasons why it happens. But again, going back to intentionality, are there things that I need to do, right? SMART goals. Is there anything I need to do ahead of time, right? If I know that breakfast is an issue and I tend to not do that, what can I do to set myself up for success, right? What is the quickest breakfast that I can prep the night before? Or if I'm going into the office, are there things I can just have there ready to go? Basic hygiene. This is one of those things, it's one of the first things to go when we're not feeling good about ourselves, right? When we're feeling depressed, right? It's hard to find the motivation to brush our hair, to brush our teeth, right? We don't have time to bathe ourselves when we're busy, again, bathing the dog, bathing the kids, all those types of things. So again, we're always the last one on that list. Sleep, again, one of the biggest ones. We tend to not prioritize it. We're on our phones before bedtime. We're, just busy being anxiously awake, right? We're not having a routine. We're just kind of throwing ourselves into bed and expecting to fall asleep and have the most wonderful sleep ever, right? Medical appointments. Are you going to the dentist? Are you going to your psychologist, right? All those little things that we need to take care of that we don't often think is self-care. We think they're just like, oh, they're just appointments I have to go to, but they are, right? Back to the hierarchy of needs. I need to take care of the basics before I start to do everything else. Resting, This is going to be a million different forms of resting. It could be sleeping. It could be just literally vegging out on the couch because you haven't had a moment to just sit down all day. For other people, it's movement. Maybe all you've done at work is sit all day. And so you need some kind of movement to get you going. Physical touch, again, going back to love and belonging being one of the needs that's often shamed. Craving physical touch is shamed, right? But if this is something that you know is important to you and it meets those needs, reflect on how you're communicating that to the people around you, right? Are you asking your partner for hugs? Are you hugging your kids? Are you hugging your dogs, right? Even just personal physical touch, right? Like such small things that we can do throughout the day. When you're washing your hair, are you just lather, 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 wash, get out? Or take the opportunity, give yourself a scalp massage, right? Take time to just focus on your senses. How does this feel? How does this smell? Right? There's lots of opportunities there. And then the last one is body image. Body image is always going to be, I think, a sensitive topic for everyone, regardless of how big you are, how small you are, anything like that. We've all grown up with some idea of what body image is supposed to be and how we do or do not fit into it. So one of the activities that I typically recommend, and I've included a link for it at the end, is this mirror exercise. And essentially what you do is you stand in front of the mirror. You can do this a few times a week. If you want to start smaller, again, SMART goals, do it a couple times a month. And you can wear as much or as little clothes as you need. And when you're looking in the mirror, you're just going to pick things that you can appreciate about yourself. And when you're somebody who struggled with body image, it's a very hard and vulnerable thing to do. But that doesn't mean you're going to say, wow, I love how my legs look, right? It'd be nice if we could say that, but sometimes we're not there yet. Can we say things like, I appreciate my legs because they're strong enough and they get me to go on hikes with my friends, right? I appreciate my arms because they allow me to hug my dog, right? They allow me to show affection to my dog, right? Lots of small ways that we can incorporate this. Emotional and psychological self-care. So are we exploring our hobbies? Are we exploring interests? When we're kids, I think that this is something that is very highly praised, right? Like it's recommended and people are pushing us in all these directions to try new things. And then all of a sudden we become adults and our hobbies and interests are going to work and setting up play dates for your kids or your dog, right? And we're not giving ourselves opportunities to just try new things. This doesn't mean you have to try it and like it, right? Either way, you're going to get helpful information. You're going to try it and it's going to be horrible. You're going to say, I am never trying crocheting again. Or you're going to be like, actually, it wasn't that bad. Maybe I'll try it again, right? Allowing yourself time for expression. This is going to be very different for everybody. For some people, it's art. For some people, it's music, talking, journaling, right? Just anything that you can do to express yourself. Next, we have time away from social media. Social media is a blessing and a curse, as I'm sure we all know. It's a curse because it makes us compare ourselves to absolutely everyone, people we don't even know. But it can be a blessing because we don't have to follow pages or people that make us question our worth, right? There's lots of people out there who are maybe a little bit more authentic that can make us feel good about ourselves, who give us, daily reminders that we're worth it, that we're doing okay, we're doing our best, right? But if you notice that social media is negatively impacting you, then maybe you need to take a break from it. Next, we have reflection. When was the last time that you said, you know what, I did a pretty good job. I'm really proud of myself. Or, maybe normally when you get angry, it takes you an hour to wind down. But this time it took you 30 minutes. We wouldn't necessarily think of that as an accomplishment or self-care, but you're noticing progress within yourself and you're giving yourself permission to just be a human and say, I'm trying really hard and I'm doing better. Not perfect, but I'm doing better. And the last one is giving yourself permission to feel your feelings. So basically an act of self-compassion. Feelings like anger, resentment, um, jealousy are oftentimes those emotions that are, again, shamed, right? We're not allowed to show those things. We're bad for showing those feelings. Being angry and telling yourself, I shouldn't be angry. Why am I doing this? That doesn't make the anger go away. Now you're just angry and you feel ashamed, right? So why make the blow that much worse? Just say, yeah, it makes sense that I feel angry because, I really wanted to go to that thing and then it got canceled last minute. So it makes sense. Right? We can be more in control of how we express those emotions, but the actual process of feeling the emotion, validate it. Give yourself permission to just sit with it. It's uncomfortable, but it's lingering around whether we acknowledge it or not. Social self-care. Be very mindful of your social battery, right? For some people, being a social butterfly and talking to everyone and meeting new people, that's how they recharge. For other people, absolutely draining, right? They recharge by being at home and just being in silence. And one's not better than the other. You need to be a little bit more in tune with what your body needs from you. I've included two different forms of social time here. One is intentional. So that's going to be, you and your friends or you and your family specifically planning out time for that. So again, Friday, we're going to meet here. This is what we're going to do. Great. Other things like more passive social time can be things like in the workplace, being around your coworkers. Do you have to like your coworkers? No. But does it need to be civil enough that you can tolerate it? Yeah. For your own benefit, yeah, it probably should be. Right. So that could be, maybe your goal is I'm going to say hi, or I'm going to ask one person at work how their day's been. That's it. Doesn't have to go beyond that. But engaging in those small little bits of socializing so that your social life doesn't feel as anxious, right? Initiating contact, right? Lots of times when we talk to our friends, if we stop and think, it's like, oh, actually, they reach out to me a lot more than I reach out to them. So I'm going to take the initiative and I'm going to start reaching out. You don't have to do it all the time, right? Again, be mindful of your social battery, but from time to time. Again, for some people, it's going to be alone time. Sometimes we need to start getting used to asking for help and being okay with being vulnerable. Having stimulating conversations. This is something that oftentimes comes up with people who just spend a lot of time with kids. So parents, teachers, daycare workers, you spend so much time with kids that you start to just talk about kid things all the time, and you're up to date on all the Paw Patrol characters and just all of those stuff, but you don't really get adult time. And when you're an adult, you need adult conversations too. So at the end of the presentation, I've included two different resources. One is, they're called love map questions. So those are just questions for you and your partner. And they're just pretty basic, kind of fun questions, but it's something that doesn't have to do with work. It doesn't have to do with the kids, doesn't have to do with the house. It's just, let's just chat. Let's just pick a topic and chat about it. The other resource is actually like an online game. I think there's a card version of it, but it's an online questionnaire that you can do, and it doesn't have to be with your partner. It could be a friend, family member, and you can pick the degree of how deep you want the questions to be. So you can start really basic, and as you finish that deck of cards, then you move on to the next one, then you move on to the next one. And there's some really great questions on there, things that maybe we've never thought about. Again, just gives us an opportunity to be adults and just talk about adult things. Boundaries and assertiveness, giving yourself permission to say no when you want to say no, to stand up for yourself, to not feel like you always have to over-explain. And then the last one, just going out of your comfort zone sometimes. Environmental self-care, maintaining a comfortable living space, keeping in mind small steps are going to be better than no steps. If maybe you're really struggling with depression and your room is just a mess and it's so overwhelming and you can't bring yourself to clean it, but it's driving you wild. Don't say, I'm going to clean the whole room. That's not a SMART goal. I am going to clean the one bedside table or bedside drawer. That's it. If it takes me 5 minutes, great. If it takes me an hour, that's fine. But that's it. So that when I've done that one drawer, I can say, I accomplished my goal. The next one with working from home, I think that we saw a lot of issues with environmental self-care at the beginning of COVID, where for a lot of us, there was a merge between our home space and our office space, and everything was just jumbled, and you couldn't really find a work-life balance, right? But when possible, if you work from your laptop, the end of the workday, close the laptop, put it in your work bag, put that bag in the coat closet. Out of sight, out of mind. Now you are just attentive to what's going on in your home. Professional self-care, once again, boundaries, assertiveness, giving yourself permission to say no when it's appropriate, advocating for yourself. Work-life balance is an interesting one. That's definitely one of the ones that's much easier said than done. There's going to be times in your life where you are going to have to prioritize work a little bit more, depending on what's going on. Other times you're going to have to prioritize your personal life, and that's okay, right? It's too much pressure to say, I always need to have a perfect 50-50 balance. It's not going to happen, right? But being mindful, this might be, maybe the first 10 minutes when you get home, if you have a family member, a friend, a partner, someone that you can talk to, 10 minutes, vent. There doesn't have to be a purpose to it. Just vent everything that you've been holding on to all day. When the 10 minutes are up, we're done. Now let's move on. But you get that reassurance that there is going to be space for what I need to say. It's just not going to take up all the space. Taking intentional breaks. So not eating at your desk, not answering emails while you're scarfing down your granola bar. No, taking a break. This might mean stepping out of your office, definitely shutting the computer or laptop screen or whatever you're working from. This might mean go out for a little half-hour walk or walk to the lunchroom, like something to create a division between the space. Taking on rewarding tasks, if that's available at work, and redefining your job. And all this means is there's a lot of pressure on us to have our job be the thing that gives us meaning and to be the space where we find purpose in life. That is a lot of pressure to have one thing meet all those needs. Sure, there's going to be people where maybe it just worked out for them, but that's not the norm, right? If your job is just your job, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. For some people, for a variety of reasons, they have to stay at their jobs, whether that's financial reasons, maybe they've looked for other jobs and they haven't been able to find anything. Don't put that pressure on yourself that this needs to be it, right? And you're a failure because you haven't met all your needs there. Let your job be your job. Find purpose and find interest and joy in other areas of your life. Lastly, we have spiritual self-care. So this is going to be self-defined. For some people, this might be religious. For some people, not. Either one is absolutely okay. But it's just reflecting on what makes you feel connected to your values, right? What gives meaning to your life? And I know that that's a very broad kind of existential question, but when was the last time you asked yourself that? Right? Taking time for thought, for reflection, spending time in nature, if that's important to you. Gratitude. I've also included at the end in the resource section a really great app that I used for a little bit. I think it's just called Grateful. And it's kind of like a gratitude journal, but instead of just writing down the things that you're grateful for, it becomes like a virtual scrapbook. So you just take pictures of things throughout the day, and it could be anything. It's really just a challenge for you to find small things throughout the day that make you feel grateful. You ordered a coffee at Tim Hortons and it turned out exactly how you wanted it, right? You got really good feedback, or you went outside and the wind was just right. It could be absolutely anything, but you're just snapping pictures throughout the day, and then later on, you just get to reflect on that. For other people, it might be art, might be praying, meditation, mindfulness. Again, this is self-defined, so there's not going to be one specific formula for what's going to be right. Okay, so these are the resources. The first one, like I said, is the gratitude app. The second one is a self-care assessment. So it's going to go over some of the self-care domains that we just went over, and it kind of gives you different tasks, and you're going to rate each from 1 to 3, I believe. And it gives you an idea of the self-care items that you're doing really well on, because I challenge you, and I bet that there's probably a lot of areas where you are doing very well on. And then you get to see the areas where you're like, oh, actually, never really thought of that. Maybe I do need to incorporate that a little bit more. I've included the 2 that I mentioned for the stimulating conversations. And then Kristen Neff, if you guys are not familiar with her, she practices and she kind of teaches all about self-compassion. And she has an amazing website where you can find so many free resources on self-compassion. Some of them are meditations. There's some book resources on there. And then the last one is just a little bit of a write-up for the mirror exercise. I think this one says it's for teens, but it's literally for anybody. Okay, I think that is it. So we just have time now for questions.
Great. Do you want to just stop your screen share so we can
Yes.
see a bit easier? Good.
There we go.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. That was a wonderful presentation. I just want to thank everybody for coming, in case you're not able to stick around for a few minutes for some questions. And we're happy to see you anytime. I hope you'll feel like you can join us for a future webinar. And again, just letting you know that there are lots of past topics for you to explore as well. So thank you for coming.